All right, today we are doing word order on HackerRank. This time it will be in Python. That's something I've been doing more recently. If you're prepping for any kind of coding interview, these are the kind of challenges that you might see. So what I'll do is I'll read the question, I'll give you some time to do it on your own, and then you'll see my solution at the end. So here we go. You are given n words. Some words may repeat. For each word, output its number of occurrences. The output order should correspond with the input order of appearance of the word. See the sample here. And so we're told that the number of words could be between 1 and 10 to the 5th, so that's quite a lot of words. And the output format is a little unusual because you're supposed to effectively like print two lines. The first line being the number of distinct words, and the second line being the number of occurrences for each distinct word according to their appearance in the input. For example, you're given these 4 words. They have 1, 2, 3, and that's kind of it. This last one is actually a repeat, so that's only 3 uniques. So the output should print 3 first. That's what we see here, 3, and then it should print the count of each word in order. So first word is this one, and it occurs twice, so you print out 2 first. Sorry, here 2, and then 1 and 1, and then for this one, which you would naturally print that, you don't need to print it because it was already counted here, so you kind of need to just skip it in that sense. And that's basically it. So I'll come back with my solution and give you some time to do on your own, and I'll see you in a little bit. All right, so I have a few things that I have one annoyance with when it comes to HackerRank is sometimes you will see these coding challenges that give you nothing and say you need to read it from standard input. That's what this is. And you need to print a standard output. But for the most part, this is like an extra step that is a part of the challenge, I guess, which is to read from standard input. So let's go through that a little bit. So, and also the reason for this is you'll notice that there are not that many languages. I don't know why it's required. Usually when you have these coding platforms, they have multiple languages that they're dealing with. And so in order to standardize how the code is input and output, they just use standard input and output. And that's one reason for having that. But I feel like it's always an extra annoyance that the people who wrote this should include this by default. And sometimes it is. But sometimes it's not. So this is how you would kind of deal with that. So I'll go through that very quickly. So it says the first line contains the integers n as the input, and then the next n lines contain a word. So it literally comes out as like as a string input. So how do you grab that in Python? Well, it's literally it's a function called input. If you do this normally, if you're like in a environment, this would actually wait for user input, but because of how this environment is set up, this is the input that is going to be automatically fed in. And so what we get here is the first line is read in. That's the first time input gets, you can call input and grab that first input. And it's literally like just a string, so we convert it to an int, and that will be the end that we'll be using. And then we will establish some kind of like output. I just made a list. I just want to make I think it's convenient for myself later on, so I convert this whole thing to a list. And what I'll do is for I in range of n, actually this doesn't need to be an I, so it's not being used, so I can just put underscore there. So for underscore in range n, append to the output the next line of the input, and that will give me my my input here. So let me actually comment some of this out so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So this will print n and output, just to show you what that looks like when I run this. So my output is 4 and then a list of all those inputs. And now that I have it in a form that I like, I'm going to create a function more standard to how these coding challenges should be, in my opinion. And just feed in those. So here I have my function defined, and then I'm just going to call the function with that input as a list. So let's get now into the actual challenge, which is not too bad. So here I have my function called my function because I'm being original. It's being fed in a list of strings, and the way my strategy here is I want to store a history, or like a running history, and I'll use a hash map, or in Python it's called a dictionary, of each string and its associated count. So the string will be the key, and the count will be the value associated with that key. So here I'm just doing this. History is my dictionary, and then I loop through for string and strings. So that's a big O of N there. And basically, if it's not in the history, then I will create it and set to 0. So that's that's the first time that string would be seen. That's the only thing that's when that happens. And then I just add 1 to it whenever the next time I see it, basically. So this will give us a history that is the count with the key as the word and the count as the value. And then I'm just getting into the answering the question. The first thing is to print the count of uniques. That will be akin to the length of the history, or the number of keys in the history. And so that's what that you can just call length on that. And that'll print out that first line. So that'd be like printing out this 3 here. All right. And then I will go through the list again, because it's already in the order. So I don't want to like do any other make anything more complex than that. I can just keep the order that it's being given in as, and I'll just need to make some kind of check to make sure that as long as if I've seen it before, I shouldn't count it twice. That's all I need to kind of instill. So here I'm looping through it again, big O of N, and here I say if the history has a value, if I can get the string from the history, if the value is non-zero, which is only the case for anything that's hasn't been printed yet, then it will continue here, and it'll print the string, the string count here. I added this end equals the space because of how the printing is requested. It's supposed to be all on one line. So by default, this end is a new line character, like that by default. So if I put nothing in here, it would be that by default. But I don't want a new line. I want a space because of the instructions. Here I set the history, the string for the history into 0, so that the next time I see it, when I do the dot get, it will basically be false and not count it more than once. And let's run this code. Okay, here's the output, and again, this is the spacing that we see from the output. And if I run it on submit, all right, looks like all that is looking good. Yeah, so the time complexity for this thing is actually not too bad. You have to go through each element once at least the first time, so that's why this is big O of N here. This second time, I was considering maybe making this more efficient. It's still big O of N, but honestly, like, it ran with no problem, so I didn't feel I need to make that any more efficient. I'm not sure if it can be more efficient, to be honest. But I guess you could. So you could make it more efficient if you create a new list the first time you loop through this. So the first time you loop through this, sorry, let me hide it. The first time you loop through it, you would be creating a second list. So that takes up a little bit more memory. So that's a consideration. But you would create a list in order, and anytime you saw something that was already in the history, you just wouldn't add it to that list. So you'd be getting all the uniques effectively from that. Minor efficiency if you want to trade off some space for that time. But honestly, it works just fine, so I didn't feel the need to do that. All right, so hope that was helpful. I'll be posting everything, my solution and whatnot, probably in a gist. But if you like this kind of content, make sure to like, subscribe, all the good things, and I will see you next time. Take care.